Okay.
Good day, ma'am. I am Kate Mariz Espino, and I'm with Joyce Angela Maria C. Alina from BSN 2-10. And now we're going to discuss the topic about Women and Child Protection Program. So first is the background. While the field's working to end violence against children and against women have largely developed separately, recent reviews and analysis of large data sets have identified multiple intersections between VAC and VAW, including co-occurrence, shared risk factors, similar underlying social norms, common consequences, intergenerational effects, and the period of adolescence as unique period of heightened vulnerabilities to both types of violence. So next,
So next is the key findings. Violence against children or the VAC and violence against women or the VAW affect the lives and welfare of millions of people around the world. Many women and children in the Philippines suffer multiple types of violence. The multiple negative sequelae of this violence can be long-lasting throughout the lifespan and across generation, as well as impacting on individuals' relationships, communities, and broader society.
so next is the agenda and priorities. The Philippines has good quality national prevalence data on some forms of VAW and VAC. However, administrative data are poorly coordinated, thus not allowing for a holistic picture to understand gaps between national prevalence and service delivery. There is no mechanism to ensure national prevalence data on VAC are regularly collected. VAW is regularly obtained from the National Demographic and Health Survey. While there are no data or studies to date on VAW and VAC intersections in the Philippines, stakeholders are aware of various important intersections and vulnerabilities. Structured data collection protocols or studies would provide useful evidence for policy and programming. So, improve access to and analysis of reliable data as well as dissemination of findings could assist in strategic funding or budget guidelines for the gender and development budget and the child protection budget. Government, legislation, and policy, multiple government departments have a role in both violence against children and violence against women and serve on the Interagency Council on Violence Against Women and their Children. Department of Social Welfare and Development or DSWD, Department of Interior and Local Government, Philippine National Police, Department of Justice, Department of Health, Department of Education, Department of Labor and Employment, Civil Service Commission, Commission on Human Rights, Council for the Welfare of Children, National Bureau of Investigation, and National Commission on the Role of Filipino Women. This committee did not appear to drive specific integration efforts. The Philippine Commission on Women is the primary policy-making and coordinating body on women's empowerment and gender equality. The Philippine Plan of Action to End Violence Against Children includes roles for the SWD, the Department of Education, Department of Justice, Council for the Welfare of Children, and the Department of Interior and Local Government. The main pieces of legislation applicable to VAC and VAW are anti-child abuse law or Republic Act 7610, anti-rape law, Republic Act 8353, and Anti-Violence Against Women and Their Children Act of 2004 or Republic Act 9262. While there are councils and committees set up to address VAC and VAW, and many service providers see both VAC and VAW survivors, there are no formal integration policies or programming guidelines. So next.
So next is the access to justice. VAW desk at the barangay or village level facilitate access to justice and support services for VAW and VAC. Survivors, primarily through referral to the Women and Child Protection Desk or the WCPD at the police stations. Protection orders, mediation, settlement, conciliation, or abbreviation are remedies offered to survivors within the barangay level, but the WCPD can refer cases for review to enter the court system. There are multiple barriers to accessing justice, including a large burden of victims to collect evidence from multiple sources, long and drawn out justice procedures, lack of sensitive or protective judicial processes, especially for children, as well as economic and social stigma issues. There are no guidelines for examining intersections between VAW and VAC in any of the judicial or law enforcement protocols.
So next is the response and support services. There are referral guidelines for VAC and VAW survivors, but these have not been integrated nor do they address intersectionality. While individual service providers may take an integrative approach when dealing with a VAW or VAC case, this is not protocol driven. Most service providers call for a separation and specialization of VAC and VAW cases. Women and Child Protection Units or WCPU are usually based within hospitals. However, again, there are not specific integration protocols that provide guidance on managing the various intersections between VAC and VAW, but rather that adult and child survivors can access services from this unit. The intake form of VAW cases includes a query on the children's welfare. There is no collaboration between medical doctors, social workers, and police officers under WCPU. However, they are unable to complete forensic rape examinations because they do not have the facilities or kits available. There are few shelters available to women and children, and most of them are consistently at or over capacity. Many shelters house both domestic violence survivors and trafficking victims. The shelter provides various services including psychological livelihood strengthening, social services, medical and dental, dietary services, and orientation to the laws that protect women in the hopes that the women will be able to live independently and seek help if they experience violence again. Few shelters will accept repeat visits from the same survivor. The shelters are not designed for the children. However, in some cases, women arrive with their children and the shelters are forced to accommodate them. They generally do not accommodate boys over age 7. There are havens for children or separate ones for girls and for boys, but these homes are also for children in conflict with the law. Trafficking victims or orphans, those are not ideal for children having to live violent homes with their mother. There are no recovery or support services for children within the women's shelter. Adolescent girls are particularly vulnerable because neither the children's home nor the women's shelter has the capacity to serve such cases. Therefore, they are often sent to shelters run by non-governmental organizations or NGOs if such support is needed. So next.
Next is the humanitarian emergencies. As in other countries, humanitarian emergencies appear to offer good opportunities for innovation and collaboration on VAC and VAW issues. However, this rapid partnership work does not usually translate into ongoing cohesive and collaborative programming. A recent example in the Philippines is the response to Typhoon Haiyan during which GBV Watch groups led by women were initiated by a local NGO to patrol communities to enhance protection for women and children. These watch groups are continuing in the communities and there are plans to initiate them in other communities in rural areas. It would be useful to conduct a post-emergency analysis to glean lessons learned and key success strategies to collaborative and innovative efforts that address both VAW and VAC in an integrative way.
So next is the prevention programming. Many stakeholders interviewed for this study considered secondary prevention approaches. For example, early identification of and intervention with victims to prevent an escalation or recurrence of violence as the main effort to prevent VAW and VAC.
So next is the recommendations. In general, the study participants suggested that integration was not an approach they felt was ideal and there were repeated calls for separated, specialized policies, services, and programs to address VAC and VAW. However, given the lack of resources as well as the existence of several services that address both BAC and BAW, it seems that pursuing some integrative or collaborative violence against children and violence against women approaches are warranted. Services and programming for adolescents is a particular gap in the Philippines. Generally, adolescents are considered children under the law. More advocacy, research, and innovation is needed to meet adolescents' needs with regard to violence against children and violence against women. Intake forms and referral guidelines could be reviewed to prompt integrative case management for violence against women and violence against children survivors. Violence against women and violence against children's stakeholders, including UN agencies, may engage in a mapping activity to understand the various approaches they are taking and find synergies or strategic opportunities for integration or other kinds of collaboration. This activity could lead into work to develop a theoretical framework of integrative violence against children and violence against women, approaches that are relevant and feasible within the Philippines, taking into account the varied resources and needs in different parts of the country. Staff of WCPUs and WCPDs and the Violence Against Women Desk would benefit from ongoing training and capacity building in both VAW and VAC issues. It appears that separate specialist units are unlikely and therefore services providers will have to continue to work with both violence against children and violence against women survivors. Improvements in both national prevalence and administrative data collection and management could provide opportunities for research on adolescent issues and intersections between violence against children and violence against women. The availability of reliable and high quality data could inform ongoing policy programming and service work to comprehensively and effectively address the violence against children and violence against women in the Philippines. So that's all.
So that's the end of our report about Women and Child Protection Program. Thank you and have a nice day.